Boxing is back with the IBO World Light Heavyweight Championship. Can Suarez take the belt? Or will one of Britain's brightest prospects, Lyndon Arthur, seize victory? Big Fight Live, Arthur versus Suarez, Friday at 10 on Channel 5.
This is Umar for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. We're at Cecconi's in Mayfair. We've just had a lunch with Frank Warren and Daniel Dubois. We'll come on to Daniel Dubois in a second, but obviously let's talk about what happened yesterday, Gareth. Confirmation from Alex Krasik and Frank Warren that Fury Usyk collapsed. Thoughts?
Well, Oleksandr Usyk, as his management team confirmed, his promoter confirmed, pulled out in the end because he wasn't happy with the contract and the deal. As Krasik said today, we'd earned about a third of what he earned for the fight with Anthony Joshua. I'm surmising here. I reckon he might have earned 8 to 10 million after tax, paying his team, and he probably earned 30 million, around that, or late 20s millions for the fight with defending those 3 belts to Anthony Joshua. Was it August or September last year? It was,
I can't actually figure it out. We've had this thing before.
I know. I can't remember what it was. Whatever it was, we were out there covering it. You know, it's a massive disappointment. Undisputed heavyweight title, 8 months in the negotiations, or even longer, maybe 10 months in the negotiations. But they just couldn't get it over the line, and I think Fury had his price, Usyk had his own worth and value, and they couldn't come to an agreement in it in the end. You know, and what it does is it renders boxing, it's not like other sports. There isn't a world governing body that says this fight needs to happen. Federer and Nadal are playing the ITF commands that they fight in the final of a tournament or whatever. So,
Gareth, 70-30, Usyk wanted in a rematch. 50-50 Tyson wanted, even if he lost. Who was right, who was wrong?
I think it should have been 50-50 in the rematch. Yeah, 50-50. Or if, look, it's up to them to agree. It's not, I don't think who was right and who was wrong. I'm not sure Usyk wanted that fight in the end. I'm not sure Fury wanted it particularly at this moment either. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. And this may have been on the cards or in the tea leaves or whatever, however you want to put it, in this grand chess game that happens when it's about money and egos in the sport. And it is about money. This has all come down to money and egos. Yes, Undisputed is a big part of it. But for me, I think Usyk and Fury may well end up fighting in Saudi Arabia at the end of the year. I think Usyk will not fight Daniel Dubois next. I think Dubois may step aside. This is my crystal ball. I could be completely wrong here.
Hang on. Frank and Dubois have been adamant today that they won't step aside.
That's their point of view. That's not what I think will happen. I think eventually, Dubois will fight Parker in the summer, Joseph Parker. I think Oleksandr Usyk will fight Deontay Wilder in the Middle East in the summer. I think if Usyk beats Wilder, I think he'll fight Fury late in the year. But that may depend on whether Fury beats Anthony Joshua in the summer. It's still the biggest fight out there. Eddie Hearn was straight replying to me last night that he really wants to get that fight made. They're denying it, the Warren Queensberry group. Obviously they've tried to have that fight on before. I think it's a great fight for the British public. I know we're going around in circles. I'm not in control of any of it. I'm just commenting on it. It's unsatisfactory for the punters and the British public that this undisputed heavyweight title fight, the first one for 25 years, I want to say, isn't it? Nearly 25 years since Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis has been on. It's a travesty in so many ways, but I do think they're all looking at the end game. They're all looking at their value. The biggest money fight in the heavyweight boxing scene is still Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury in the UK. Initially, 2.5 million pay-per-view buys, in my view, sold out Wembley Stadium, or it could even go to Saudi Arabia. Of course, it could, with a 100 million site fee. It's a massive fight. That's just my ruminations on where I think the chess pieces may move to at this point. I don't know if I'm right or not, but 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in this case. I'm not happy with either man. I can't believe they didn't get it over the line. But something was wrong with this all. I've told you in every interview we've done, I've been sceptical that it would take place because it just something wasn't right about the timings, moving it from February, moving it to April, moving it from the Middle East to Wembley Stadium. They should have got it over the line by now. You know, so...
Just to go back to yesterday, do you have any understanding as to who sort of walked away or pulled the plug finally?
We know who pulled the plug.
Who? Well, people don't.
Yeah, we know who pulled the plug. But well, it's public. It's public records. Egis Klimas said early in the morning that Usyk was pulling out, his manager from the United States. Alex Krassyuk said as much in the afternoon after he and Frank Warren had been live on TalkSport, both at the same time. They tried to have a conversation to sort it out in the afternoon. We know there were 4 lawyers discussing it on Sunday, according to Frank Warren, that they were discussing trying to get that final deal done. The rematch clause was an issue, a sticking point anyway. Usyk wanted a rematch clause because he had accepted 30-70, as you've already highlighted to me and asked me. So, in the end yesterday, that you need both sides to agree, and in the end, Usyk wasn't happy with the deal being offered to him. Privately, Krassyuk sent me, and he hasn't been not public about this, Krassyuk sent me messages, and I don't think they were off the record, saying he's not being treated like the unified champion. He might have sent these... You interviewed him yesterday. He wasn't being treated like the unified champion. He was being treated like a number 14 WBC contender, and the contract wasn't right. So, you know, we are where we are. It's very disappointing, but at least they have to move on now, and they will all move on. Listen, if Dubois fights Usyk, fine. Where does that take place? Here, Middle East, O2. Tough fight for Dubois. Very tough fight for Dubois. But I've spoken to him today myself here at this lunch, which is one of the reasons why Warren's obviously called the lunch, because he wants to talk about Dubois and where he can go now as mandatory for Usyk. He's the first mandatory in line as well. April's going to be a cruel month because we wanted April 29th at Wembley. We've got April 1st, we're going to Fight Week with Anthony Joshua and Anthony Joshua and Jermaine Franklin next week, and then we've got 2 weeks later Joe Joyce and Zhili Zhang. That will create some pathways. As Eddie Hearn said, I hope Anthony Joshua makes a statement and calls out Tyson Fury. I know it's round and round in circles. This is the way it is right now. It's annoying. There's 6 or 7 fights out there need to be made. Fury Joshua, Fury Joyce, Fury Usyk, Usyk Wilder, Wilder Fury, Wilder Joyce, Wilder Joshua. There's 6 or 7 fights there. Are we going to see these fights in our lifetime? Are we going to see these fights in this era of heavyweight boxing? I hope so. The 4 kings, Duran, Hagler, Hearns, and Leonard. 9 times they fought each other, those 4. We got all those fights in the Bowe, Holyfield, Lewis, Tyson era. We got Tyson Lewis eventually. We got all the other fights. Bowe and Lewis we didn't get, but we got 5 fights with Lewis, Bowe, and Holyfield. 3 and 2 there. That we missed out. We probably missed out on 3 fights. We got a very late fight between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. 6 years too late, in my view. 5, 6. That was the biggest generating fight in boxing history. It's such a weird sport. I hope we see these heavyweight fights, because if it carries on like this, we're not going to get finality in this era. And there is a lot of debate. Will Usyk beat Fury? It's a fight we want to see. It's an intriguing fight with no foregone conclusion. Fury would need to be at his best to beat Usyk, in my view. It's a close fight. It's a points fight. Or Fury might get to Usyk late, in my view. But he needs to pressure him. I don't know what more to add today. It's very disappointing that we're not sitting here saying the fight's on. But after all the back and forth for so long, when you're in the position we are, chasing people around to find the true narrative, it's almost a relief that it's actually off. It's a weird thing to say, but it's actually a relief.
No, I exactly know what you're on about. Obviously, it's not the outcome we wanted, but it is actually a relief just to... We don't have to text people tomorrow saying what's going on.
We're not just texting people tomorrow, it's back and forth, trying to understand who's giving us information and misinformation. It's not just two parties, there are 6 or 7 people in the background that I'm talking to, and it's been an on-off chat, rather like the Conor Benn, Eddie Hearn boxing border control situation. That's been on-off. I mean, it looks at the moment like that's pressing on to be a June fight between the two, and Conor Benn hasn't even had a hearing yet.
Who won? Simon already? Actually, you said it was going to be a split draw. Were you correct in the end?
I think there were times in that interview, have we spoken about this or not?
Not since.
There were times in that 90 minutes where Simon Jordan didn't give Eddie Hearn enough room to answer, and it's a bit like a fighter smothering his work and not taking a step back and picking his punches. He did get Eddie to admit he'd got regrets. I didn't learn a lot new that I didn't know, but we've had conversations behind the scenes. The Chatham House rules where we speak on the record and off the record, but we haven't moved on because Conor Benn still hasn't had a hearing and the fight's moving on. So we're back to where we were. It's a very grey area. It's still a very, very grey area. And it looks like, if I understand it right, it does look like it's going to be Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. It's a massive fight now still. Very controversial. People say, well, why are you going to cover it? Because we have to be there to witness it. It's going to be a very difficult fight week, whether it be in the Middle East, who it's sanctioned by. There's going to be a lot of negative stories around it, but people will be rubbernecking to watch the fight.
Thank you for your time, mate.
Pleasure.
Refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt ring.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,